Welcome in. It's Soccer Over There / Soccer Down Here / PM edition, because we got some chaos to talk about, and we've got Jessica Charman hanging out. You jumped into some chaos, Jess.
That's kind of me, right? I'm like a whirlwind of chaos. I bring you disorganization, but in a delightful manner.
We booked you for the show, and then the Orlando Pride have to drop out of the NWSL Challenge Cup. 6 players tested positive, 4 staff, and with the tournament set to start on Saturday, they were not able to sort things out. Now, a couple of things that we're still trying to piece together, just to kind of lay some groundwork here, is the one NWSL positive test that was reported last week reportedly was one of these players. We don't know all of the circumstances with testing and protocols for training with the NWSL. We talked about that a lot this morning with Atlanta United and the MLS side, which we have a pretty good grasp on. I don't know how often they're testing in the NWSL right now. I don't know what the procedure is if there's a positive, and then does everybody go into self-isolation? Is it a small group that goes into self-isolation? Not sure, but 6 positives, 4 staff, all asymptomatic, which is an important element here to keep in mind for their health. But for the health of the tournament, and the NWSL said all the right things, Jess. They said that they'd planned for this. You're going to an 8-team tournament. That's an easy adjustment. You put the 2 teams that were in Orlando's group. One goes to one group, one goes to the other. That's doable. You get a couple extra games. Workable, but this is a huge black eye for an event that the NWSL has a lot riding on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's solvable in terms of the logistics of the tournament. It's not going to cause the tournament to be eradicated, but it's just disappointing from a standpoint of potentially players not taking it seriously, potentially people not viewing this tournament as important as it is. Now, again, it's rumors. I've just read the article now in The Athletic, but potentially these cases linked to a night out in a bar. Now, in my opinion, are you supposed to be at a bar in general? If things are normal, do you want to be going out to a bar a week before your major tournament? Probably not. Do you want to be going to a bar in Orlando, which has crazy positive results at the moment during COVID before your tournament? Definitely not. So to me, that would be the first thing that strikes a chord, is that players, staff, maybe not taking this tournament as seriously as they should be. And how do you feel as NWSL when you've made the effort and you've taken some risks and you've put a financial investment in the game, and then one of your teams potentially isn't taking it as seriously as they could be?
Yeah, it's got to be really upsetting to players who worked hard for Orlando to get back on the field, make the most of this tournament. They're going to miss that opportunity now. For a club that is spending money to do this and has spent a good bit of money to do this, and by all accounts, all the players will be paid in full. Any player who opted out of the tournament wasn't going to lose any money because of this. And now Orlando doesn't even get any games to do anything with. What else do we have out there, John, on this? Because I know there's a bunch of different people who have written about it. Reportedly, it was at least one player who went out to a bar in Orlando, and that's what they're starting to isolate down to where this started from. Where are we at with everything?
All right. Caitlin Murray, speaking to a few sources, this is from her Twitter account. It appears they were supposed to self-isolate, but a group of younger Orlando Pride players went out to nightclubs and bars, which have been open in Florida.
Bring the age into it. We're not all irresponsible youngsters.
Reading directly from Caitlin Murray. This is how it's being phrased by Caitlin here. Transmission was determined not to be through training, which was the main concern. Multiple sources from throughout the NWSL tell me, meaning Caitlin, veterans are angry and don't want the tournament derailed because of this. They chalk it up to the actions of players who didn't follow the rules in place. You okay, Jess?
Yeah, my camera just fell down. Everyone wants to see my face. I'm shocked. We
have to discipline that camera. Then also on the board, the article from Julia Poe, the Orlando Sentinel. She has Players and staff members who tested positive isolated for at least 14 days and will continue to receive medical attention. Housemates and other team members who have come into close contact with the affected individuals will continue to be monitored for symptoms and undergo testing. Continuing from the Poe article, another paragraph, a source told the Sentinel the Orlando Pride had lobbied to fly to Utah 10 days before play was scheduled to begin, which could have been enough time for some of the players to be cleared after being quarantined, getting tested again. The source said the earliest the Pride were allowed to fly to Utah was Wednesday, 3 days before the tournament. She also mentions that there was none of the affected members of the Pride came into direct contact with players or staff from Orlando City or Orlando City B, Jason.
Okay, so a couple of things to parse through that. That last part is important when it comes to the MLS's back tournament. Orlando City is going into the MLS bubble this week. They live in Orlando. The tournament's in Orlando. They're going into the protective bubble, and it's not a real bubble. We understand that. But they're going into that now. They're leaving home to go into that. That should tell you how seriously MLS has taken this, and Orlando City has taken this in terms of the outbreak in Orlando, which none of the teams that are flying in, something that's come out today, Sam Stej called The Athletic, they're landing at an executive airport, not at Orlando's International, which didn't have the issues that it was reported to have either anyway, and as we heard, you're not going through that anyway if you're flying charter, but to be extra, extra, extra safe, you're not flying in that way. So keep that in mind. The other thing you can parse from that part from Julia Poe is that Sydney Leroux is not one of the players who has tested positive because Dom Dwyer plays for Orlando City, and there would be an issue there if that was the case. We don't know who tested positive. And you'd also consider her a veteran,
go ahead, Jess. She's probably one of the more mature players out there that's mad at those youngsters. When you hear it referred to as the youngsters, and you don't blame the veterans, it must be so frustrating when you've prepared in your off season, you've worked hard, and you were committed to playing, because we know there's certain players that didn't even want to play in the first place, but those that want to play, that were prepared to play this close to the tournament, to have it taken away from you, to be snatched away when you're packing your bag, it's frustrating due to carelessness. And it kind of shows why MLS is having to create this bubble and take this bubble darn seriously, because unfortunately, it seems that some people cannot be trusted.
Yeah, the part of it that I've got questions about that I hope the NWSL answers is the part about Orlando wanting to be there 10 days before and not be there, get there on Wednesday. 10 days before would have been around the time we think, and this is all trying to connect dots, of when the first person tested positive, which was reportedly coming out last Friday. So I would assume that because that came out fairly early Friday, that they tested positive on Thursday. Would that have made a difference? We don't know. It's hard to tell, but I don't know if the timing necessarily would have helped. I do have a problem with the teams arriving in Utah a few days before the tournament with this risk, because as we're seeing in Orlando, like whatever testing you're doing, whatever protocols you're doing, it didn't work. Now, a player reportedly didn't self-isolate like they've been told to, or a group of players didn't self-isolate like they've been told to, but you had more than that group test positive, it sounds like. I don't know if all 6 of the players who tested positive and the 4 staff members were out at the bar. So it spread, and if you show up on Wednesday and you have somebody who is positive and you find out with the testing when they arrive on Wednesday, are you really in a situation to be able to handle all this? Because you're a few days away from the tournament. That team could be shorthanded, especially if it's spread within the team. I've just got questions about the NWSL's protocols and testing procedures as a whole, because it doesn't seem to be working very well, at least in Orlando's case. Maybe they're the isolated one who weren't following things correctly. Maybe it's just a fluke because you had players who went out and went to a bar.
And you have to hope so for the whole sake of the tournament, because, okay, they've been able to adapt it from 9 teams down to 8, but when you have a league of this size, you can account for one team dropping out, but next thing you know, if it happens to anyone else. So hopefully this has happened early enough to almost serve as like a warning to any players that were planning to go out to the bar anytime soon. But it just blows my mind, just as professional athletes, that you would be, like I say, whether it be COVID times or not, to me, I don't know if the bar's the right place to be going this soon to a tournament. But
I've been watching
maybe that's
the
just
Dream
my
Team
mentality.
and Harchester United too much, so I'm not putting anything past any team at this point. I don't know. We'll find out more, I'm sure, as the days go on. This all broke during the afternoon with Orlando dropping out. We've got stuff in England to talk about. We really didn't get into it too much today on the show. Liverpool didn't really look that great. Manchester City's looked really good since coming back. I haven't really followed the championship, so I'd like to get an update there. Jess, what's your take been on just England coming back and where the level is?
I've been really glad on the return, and from the games that I've watched, not bad at all. I think that teams have sort of learned. The first league we saw come back maybe was a little bit slower, but now it seems with Spain coming back, with England coming back, potentially they've had a little bit longer of training, or potentially they've watched the standard and they've realized what they need to adapt to come back that much smoother. I think it's been pretty good. We've still seen some mistakes, and I think that comes from lack of playing time. There's some issues. I'm trying to think back to all the highlight reels that I watched. I just watched
Patrick Bamford,
the Man City game, but there were plenty of defensive errors of poor timing with the ball, judging the crosses, watching the bobble, and as much as I'm not naming them, John, you might be able to go into the details, but I think that pattern of those errors comes from not having as many touches in a competitive environment. Even, dare I say it, the Watford equaliser, I think it was a great finish, but potentially keeper on a better day, or on a day where he's had more reps at close contact, reacts quicker to that one. So things like that, I think you're seeing at a slightly slower pace, but it's not as noticeable as when Bundesliga came back for me personally. But again, I'm English, so maybe I'm biased and thinking about the standard of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Jess, you have the Ender Stevens gaff in the Sheffield United match.
That's the one where he sliced and missed it completely.
It was an absolute whiff. And then the unnecessary bit of argy-bargy that Egan had to get the first half yellow card, and then gets Joe Linton gets free in the second half, second yellow. There's your red. Bada bing, bada boom, you're gone. And then it's all downhill for Sheffield United from there. Newcastle gets the Duke and a big 3 points. Sheffield United still looking for points after their return. I know that in the championship, Jason, we didn't get into the championship a whole lot, but our friends at Leeds United had an opportunity, couldn't capitalize on it. Cardiff got the win 2-0, and so now West Brom and Leeds are even at 71 points. West Brom is up on goal difference. They are 3 higher right now at a plus 27. So it looks like the run-in is going to be a shootout for 1, 2, and then obviously you look at 3, 4, and 5 right now. It's Fulham, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, and then you end up with a street fight looking for that 6th spot, where you have 6 through 12 separated by 3 points right now.
Hey, and Reading's not too far off the mix. We got to draw it. If we did well, we were going to get the win, and then in the 90 plus 2, we ended up equalizing. So that pretty much put a nail in our coffin on our season, I would say. It's just a little bit too far away. But something that was really cool that the championship clubs have done for all season ticket holders, there's a program called I Follow. It's basically like an ESPN Plus for the championship. They did give access to all season ticket holders to their games. There were some technical difficulties this week, which I know a lot of people were disappointed about. But when you have, this many teams, and I'm sure on the you got this many teams, they've got a lot of season ticket holders. That's a lot of traffic flow. I fortunately got on probably 2 hours before and was able to watch it. I was just patiently waiting, refreshing my screen, making sure that it didn't log me out. But I thought that was really cool and a nice way of keeping your fans interacting, keeping your money, financially. Yes. I think it's a way of them feeling like they can keep the money without feeling guilty about it. And then we saw the Zooms. I don't know if you saw in the Man City game. Yeah. There was the Zoom fans behind the goal. I thought that was a really cool thing as well. And I hope more teams do that, because that's better than the still pictures. Reading had, you could pay £20 and have your face cut out. I didn't do it. I regretted it in the end.
Come on.
They actually look really good, but I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. But then I was like, dang, I would have seen myself. But I think the Zoom is a really good way of showing that interaction and having that connectivity between the players and the fans again, because the players can actually see the crowd moving at that point. So that looked really good to me.
The big news out of today, City won 5-0 over Burnley, but Sergio Aguero might be done for the year. Guardiola said afterwards, we'll see tomorrow, but it doesn't look good for this season. Tomorrow we will see and know exactly what he has, but the doctor says it will take time. A few games for sure, but maybe tomorrow the test he is going to get. Maybe some good news, we will see. He had reportedly been struggling with a knee injury since coming back, and he was caught right before halftime by Ben Mee of Burnley and had to leave. So I don't think the rest of the Premier League season is really the issue here. It's more about Champions League in August. So if you're able to get to that with him, all right, Pep will take that trade-off, but he's got a pretty big concern potentially losing Aguero.
And speaking of knee injuries, what did you guys make of the Leno incident and the finger pointing? Because that was something new to me. I have never seen, I don't think, a player on a stretcher having to be withheld by the men in PPE to calm down and stop pointing his finger. I thought that was a very interesting
Where were his teammates during the whole thing? Because nobody reacted from Arsenal. Mm-hmm. Nobody acted like they had a problem with the challenge, and I thought the challenge was completely unnecessary.
Yeah, it's one of those where, particularly as a goalkeeper, you'd expect your defensive line to step in. For me, my centre-back should be my wingman, per se, and should be there right to fight my corner. And I think that maybe was almost like a visual representation of Arsenal and their lack of coherence, because you see it when they play. You see their lack of communication, and the fact that your goalkeeper can't get defended while he's on the ground, clearly with a serious knee injury. Goalkeeper union in me tells me that there was absolutely no need to jump in on that one. I did listen to his post-match interview. He did sound apologetic, but still, I think you have to admit.
There's a couple things here, though. Like I don't think he meant to hurt him. I don't think he went in with bad intent, but it was still reckless, and it was still unnecessary. Like, those two things can be true.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think you have to put your hands up and be like, maybe looking back, I shouldn't have jumped in, and it's something that I'll learn, because when you're that close to the edge of the box, like, just let it go. The goalkeeper's got it. And he's going to, if he was thinking that him jumping was going to make the goalkeeper step out his box anyway, with the momentum, he was probably going to take himself out anyway without needing to make physical contact. So for me, it was a cringeworthy one to watch, because as you watch him step and twist, it didn't look pretty. But it's a good opportunity for, again, I'll drop Reading, but former Reading goalkeeper Emi Martinez to get a chance in goal potentially. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for him, because he did brilliantly with Reading, just never really got a chance to shine. So
this is going to get interesting now that we're getting towards the end of the seasons. The Bundesliga is almost done. We've got Champions League. We kind of know what the transfer window timing looks like. And you're starting to hear rumors, and it's a really weird time because there's still games to play. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But now in Spain, something we've talked about a decent bit with their kind of cap rules about, basically they present a proposed amount of revenue that you're going to bring in that season. The league says yes, and you can't spend beyond that. So it's a little different than straight-up financial fair play, where that's more after the fact. This is a cap before. Well, according to Gianluca Di Marzio, and this is all about Barcelona and Lautaro Martinez, the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, is about to impose a restriction, which will be official in the next few hours, which limits the investments for Barcelona, for Atletico Madrid, and Real Madrid. I'm assuming because he doesn't want them to just keep going past everybody else. They'll only be able to invest 25% of their sales revenue, which makes a move for Lautaro pretty much impossible. Like, I just don't see how you're going to have the money to do that. That's big. That's big, because Barca has a lot of work to do. Real could spend whatever they wanted to, but they're going to be restricted, it looks like. I don't know Atleti's financial situation as well, but that's a big deal in Spain. I think it's a smart move, because man, the financials for all these teams coming out of this are going to be ugly.
It's a good way of equalizing things on the playing field as well. I think too often we see the argument that money talks in soccer, and unfortunately the results seem to show that too, with league equality. And when you've got teams that are going to be so hard hit on the lesser side of things with COVID, it's a nice way of kind of lessening that gap, because if they're struggling, you're kind of almost forcing a bit more struggle on those top teams to equalize things. So I'm all for it, because as a neutral, you want to see fun games, and fun games are close games. There's no fun in teams blowing out and every year being predictable. So I don't think that's a bad move at all to keep engagement and equality within the league.
Let me
go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, the question that I asked you this morning, Jason, let me ask Jess tonight. Do you foresee a widening of the haves and the have-nots, even with something like this in place in La Liga? Are those teams at the top going to be even further along and continue their rise, and the teams that are still struggling financially, is that gap going to widen, you think?
I would hope not. I think the whole point of this being put into place is to try and reduce it by limiting how much they can spend. But I think the biggest fear is how badly has COVID hit those lesser teams? Because just because you're capping a huge team doesn't mean that 25% isn't still substantially higher than the lesser team. So I think when you look in like certain leagues and with ticket sales and reducing of the ways that they make their money, and if in these neighborhoods, people have been really hit, are they going to be able to buy tickets even when the doors do reopen? Is this a long-term thing where, fans of smaller teams aren't going to be able to spend as much money? You don't have fans from all over the world buying your stuff and bringing you in profits. So my biggest fear would be, how hard hit are those small teams going to be? Just as we said, in England, we've heard a lot of League Two teams that are terrified of not being able to start up ever again. And you worry if that's the case in Spain too, of those smaller teams. And just because you're capping the bigger teams, they're going to be okay regardless. So I think it's more about, how are you going to help those teams that are really, truly struggling? And that's what they're going to have to work out too.
Yeah, it's a massive issue. These smaller teams without the revenue of a game day, I don't know what it looks like, and it's all over the place in Europe. It's all over the place here. I just saw that Louisville City's been approved for 50% capacity at their venue. And then you've got others talking about, not expecting to be able to sell tickets the rest of this calendar year in parts of the world and in the United States. So it's impossible to predict. But the financials and the financial impact and the financial implications, they're part of the conversation, whether we like it or not. They are part of this, and I don't know. It's a lot of it for me. It's getting to the point where it's just every day I have no idea what to expect, and I'm still surprised with what happens. I didn't expect to lose a team in the NWSL today due to positive tests. I didn't expect to see, in the League Two playoffs, I don't know if you had a chance to see this. Northampton Town was down 2-0 going into the second leg. They lost 2-0 at home, but we know kind of home field doesn't really mean too much at the moment. But they went on the road and won 3-0, so they won 3-2 on aggregate. But you lose that, and we talked about this coming in, John. You lose that. You spent six figures to get back on the field for a playoff situation, and you blew it in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And are they opening Wembley? Did I read they are still going to play at Wembley Stadium?
Yeah, they're going to play it at Wembley.
League Two final.
Yeah. It's an amazing stadium to play in, and I'm sure the players are excited, but to me that's insane. The thought of playing in an empty Wembley, like we talk about echo, but that's got to be a next level weirdness, walking out to an empty Wembley. To me, I don't know if it's worth it playing there and having them travel, to Wembley. It's not really the halfway venue between the teams, that kind of thing. So I wonder, I guess it's to do with the ceremonial value of it and the excitement, but I just think that's a weird one to me, because that's got to be a really daunting thing, stepping into an empty Wembley.
Well, and Jason, you mentioned Northampton Town and Cheltenham. The other one, the other match where you had Exeter and Colchester, they had to go extra time to get it done. But once again, it was Exeter having to score 3 times and knocking off Colchester 3-2. So you had two teams in Colchester who had a lead and Cheltenham who had a lead, who had to spend all this money, and you get zero return.
Heartbreak. You lose money. Like you lose a lot of money because you've invested in this, and Lord.
I mean, the numbers that people were talking about just to come back for the playoff, because you had training time, you had the testing you had to do to get ready, you had players that you had to sign to short-term contracts who would have been out of contract potentially. You've got a ton of issues, and you spent that for nothing when you didn't have it to begin with, probably, in most of these cases. I'll be really curious to see what comes out of that, because those two clubs who are out just had to spend more money than anybody else around them, and they lost, and they're going to go back into League Two next year, but at a disadvantage because they just blew a bunch of money.
Yep.
And they don't have a huge reserve to sit on.
No, you've been punished for doing just too good.
You've been punished for success.
A little bit too good, but not good enough, and then you get punished for it. It's like, it's got to be the biggest kick in the teeth that not only are you disappointed that you're not going to go to Wembley for a chance, but you've spent all that money. And these are the games that usually bring in the most money. The games with playoffs where you're able to sell your tickets and then a chance. Well, the team that loses in the playoff final, usually going to Wembley is just about enough, because financially you do make enough money to make it worthwhile, that even when you lose, at least you made a profit out of it. Imagine losing now and knowing that you didn't gain anything, bar I guess they might come up with a clever way to sell Zoom something, or I don't know. You've got to come up with a way, though. Whoever's in charge of marketing needs to start getting the work on.
Here's an interesting economic case study going forward, and knowing me, I'll probably be the one to dive into this. The 12 teams in League Two, League One, and the Championship that go into the playoffs that aren't in those automatic promotion spots. The 9 that don't make it, how are their finances for next season, whenever that is, how impacted are those finances, and how do they do all of their workarounds, and how do they end up approaching next season? I think that those 9 teams that end up losing and not getting promoted, it's going to be an interesting economic case study for me about how they handle things going forward to get into next season.
And the other economic thing on that side is you often see when you're the team that misses out on promotion, you lose some of your best players. It's always the way, because this was a player that had stuck by you but was looking to play in the next division, and then you end up losing your stars. So it's that rebuilding period. Maybe you make a few $1 from selling your players, but then you're having to rebuild and replace some of your stars of the show because you were that close. And I mean, look at the majority of the teams that have a good playoff run and get so close to promotion usually struggle the next year. And I guess I'm talking from painful experience there.
So let me get the math right. The 9 teams across the Championship, League One, League Two that were in a playoff that don't get promoted.
Right.
Okay. I will make a bold prediction and say that of those 9, 7 of them miss out on the playoffs next year. Because I think they're all going to have a huge hit from this that they're going to struggle to recover from, and they're going to go back to the middle of the table. I'll say this, I think 1 gets relegated next year out of that 9. Because
wouldn't surprise me.
It's probably going to be one of the smaller ones, because they're the ones who are going to get hit the hardest and have the least to figure this out with. It's
that's
rough.
That's the biggest relegation too. If you're looking at a League Two side that was about to get promoted to League One, huge deal, then gets relegated into the conference, that's a costly and almost irrecoverable, relegation sometimes. Like that ends your club in some ways. And so whoever that is, I'll hope it doesn't happen. I'll hope they all survive, but I would be pretty sure that, like you say, 80% of them end up mid-table. It's always the way. It's very, very difficult and rare for a team to miss out and have that heartbreak and then have a bounce-back season in normal times, let alone when it's costing you this much money, when you've kind of messed with all your players' emotions, because 1 minute they think their season's done, the next thing, they're having to get rallied up for playoff format. So I think this is really not ideal. For the one team, great, you get promoted. But for everyone else, I think it's signing your death sentence for next season.
We're going to go about 15 more minutes, so if you have any tweets or questions, send them our way on social media at Soccer Down Here. One reason we're stopping early is on FS1 right now. I just watched Carlos Bocanegra walk the U.S. men's national team out in the 2010 World Cup match, against Algeria with the Landon Donovan goal, the moment for U.S. soccer. I don't think there's another one you can even put close. I would say, and Jess, you might fight me on this, but I'm gonna put this out there. That goal was more meaningful to the United States men's national team program than David Beckham's goal against Greece for the English men's national team.
You know, I'm not going to fight you, even though I love David Beckham.
I do too.
Because there's a difference in the history of the soccer teams. Now, I don't want to say that I'm not that soccer snob that looks down on the US or whatever, but for England, they have a history. They'd won a World Cup. Yes, maybe it was like a rebirth of an era and everyone was super pumped. But let's be honest, in England, we go through, this is the year every 4 years, every 2 years, really, with Europe and then the World Cup. We think that this is going to be our year, and that goal kind of established that again. Everyone was super excited. David Beckham's the best player in the world. He's going to be the reason we win the World Cup. Blah, blah, blah. Doesn't happen. Not in my lifetime, anyway. It's become a very repetitive story.
Hey, 18 was good, though.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant. But the US, this was a moment of kind of, and again, I didn't live here at this point, but from the soccer fans that I know, that's what they pivotalize a lot of them as the moment they fell in love with the game, or the moment they realized that soccer in the US was actually serious, and the moment that they sort of fell in love. So I think it's an amazing moment, and it was a kind of a period that people, even in England, started to take the US a bit more seriously. You know, it was always a bit of a laughing stock, which, you know, it's the truth. It was always soccer, and people made fun of it and all of that jazz. And this was a moment where people around the world started to look, okay, the US is more of a contender now. And unfortunately, you know, it's been up and down for the US men's national team. But I think that's a moment that a lot of people point to as a moment when they really believed that soccer could compete as a sport to be taken seriously.
There's just not another moment like that for the U.S. men that I can think of. And I mean, it was kind of wild that a year later you had the Abby Wambach goal at the World Cup that was one of the moments on the women's side. But there's multiple moments on the women's side. The Olympic match with England, with Canada, I'll put into that. The semifinal in the last World Cup with England. I mean, there's so many moments on the women's side. This was it on the men's side. I mean, this is the one that I will always remember where I was and what that whole day was like, because it was a 10 a.m. kickoff here, and we were piled into the bar to watch this thing, and it was just the most nerve-wracking day because the U.S. had to win. You're watching the other match and results, and it was that group that the U.S. and England were both in that didn't go well really for either one. You're going into this just watching the other TV, watching this game. Like, it just looks like there's not going to be a goal. Algeria is eliminated, but they're packing everybody behind the ball for no good reason. It's just
because
one
they
of
wanted
those
to
games.
Stop the US.
Yeah, they just wanted to eliminate the U.S. They weren't even trying to win the match. It was just something that drives you nuts. And it's just chance after chance after chance that just isn't coming. And I will remember when Tim Howard threw the ball out to Donovan. And there's a moment when you watch it back where Donovan takes a really hard step at the defender, and you see the defender, like, stutter. And that's when I stood up. That's when I stood up like, okay, something's about to happen. Like, he's at least driving past this defender, and he's going to go into the final third. And then the shot saved, and people are throwing their hands up like, no. And then the rebound for Donovan to come through, because Dempsey had so many chances in that game and could not find a goal. And we're doing Jaeger shots at 11:55 in the morning for lunch because it was one of those days. Yeah, it was crazy.
I think, oh, wow.
And then I went to an Atlanta Beat game that night.
I think I was in Los Angeles.
2010.
So it was, it was 3 hours. I was 3 hours earlier in the day.
You were not doing Jaeger shots.
No, I was not.
At 9 in the morning.
That was, wow. Yeah, that was really early. That was an incredibly early day. Because that was the thing. It's just that entire World Cup, I just remember getting up at like 4 and 5 in the morning and watching matches. And because I was out there as opposed to being here. So that's how it all fell out for me.
At Sydney LaRue on Twitter. I am
go.
heartbroken. The majority of our team and staff worked our asses off to put us in the best position to play the game we love again. Not just for ourselves, but for our families, friends, fans, and our city. Good luck to the teams going to Utah. Wish we were there with you. Stay safe.
The majority of our team, like, she is not holding anything there.
No, that's a
like
loaded
that is
sentence.
calling it out. That is letting them know. And honestly, that really makes me think the bar thing has to be pretty accurate, that most of them were there because she is making sure that people know this wasn't a freak accident, that someone's mum brought it home, or, you know, they touched something at the grocery store. No, they made a choice to go out and get it. So, I mean, I don't blame her for being peed off. No. Who wouldn't be? I would be furious.
You could say the full word, Jess. I think that
one's okay around here.
Yeah.
It is after dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and say that word, but that came out 10 minutes ago, and suffice to say that Sydney LaRue is quite pissed.
I would be, though, and like I say, I think it really shows that there's someone that's responsible, and now that you have to wonder how Orlando builds. Do those players end up, having to find another team? Because there's going to be some serious resentment in there, or do Orlando make a decision from above if it was an irresponsible choice, Yeah. I don't know. And also, I want to know if the staff members got it at the bar, because if the staff were going out to party with the players, then we've got all sorts of issues going on there.
And this is another good point from Julia Poe. This would have been LaRue's first game since 2018. Because remember, she's had 2 kids, and they were the way things worked out, I think with a knee injury mixed in as well. This would have been her first games in a couple of years.
So how hard she's prepared for that to have it take place.
She
I do not know when the next games are going to be.
Fuming.
Like, when is she going to... And now she has to watch her husband play. Like, and that'll rub salt into the wound.
And nobody wants to watch Orlando City.
I was going to say, you're going to see Dom Dwyer either sit on the bench or miss sitters.
Bless her heart. Like, you got to feel for that girl. I don't think she's missing out on playing.
It's been a minute since we played it, so it was time.
Andrew Rannells is so awesome.
Yeah, I feel for Sydney right now. That must be a real kick in the teeth.
All right, we need a ruling from our only English member of the SDH network. We've been using, for people who do something exceedingly stupid, they have been the twit of the day.
Yeah.
Which would be better, the twit of the day or the git of the day?
Twit. Git is more of like an aggressive term. Like a git is like a really nasty person. A twit, I think it should be the plonker of the day, though.
Oh, that's even better.
Plonker, I think. Plonker is one of my favorite.
Okay.
My mom doesn't like that word. She used to hate me using plonker, but it's a good one.
That'll work.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely going to become the plonker of the day.
You want to know who the plonker, the PM is?
I don't know. I might have one for you.
The moron who flew the plane over Manchester City and Burnley.
No, he's beyond it. Git was more aggressive.
Dumbass.
Yes.
And we can say that here, so we're going to go Git for him. Plonker's just dummy. Idiot.
Plonker is too light-hearted. Like, that's just I don't even know the word for that one. There's a lot more rude words for that one. But I will say how amazing the captain did.
Oh, Ben Mee, that was great.
Yeah, that was exceptional. A little bit more. The 2 managers' speeches weren't as there, but he led by example, the Burnley captain, and showed why he has that armband. So if anyone hasn't watched that as an explanation of how he feels and the players feel about that moment, I think that was the perfect post-game speech to sum up, and far better than any words that I could say on that topic. I just thought that was exceptional.
Yeah, totally agree. The plonker of the show is the president from Trabzonspor in Turkey, Ahmet Ageoglu. He attacked the opponent's team's employees after losing points in the last minutes of the match. There's still shots on Twitter of him charging in, like, attacking people. He's trying to wrestle this one guy, and people are all running in trying to stop him. He was mad because his team blew points late in the match, so he is the plonker of the day. Ahmet
That's a good
Agoglu.
plonker.
Okay, I'm trying to. Okay. I'm seeing the stills.
Yeah, I've just seen the stills.
Yeah, I'm seeing the stills of our gentleman here. He's wearing a nice medium T-shirt and chasing after folks, and it's like, dude, chill.
It's not the right time to be chasing after people, guys.
No, I don't want to be grabbing people.
Away.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know what the testing procedures are in Turkey. Maybe he feels really strongly about the protocols and feels really safe, but I'm not wanting to roll around with anybody right now that I don't know. Not happening.
Well, it looks like there was also a bit of argy-bargy up in the stands about it, too.
It was an empty venue, right?
I was going to say,
fans having argy-bargy, were there?
There's stuff going on up in the stands. I'm trying to translate the tweet real quick. Trabzonspor manager Yusuf Hayriolu gives Alyanspor chairman Hassan, who threatened them with the name of Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu Hassan.
Oh,
so I guess you had. Oh, okay. So you had a boatload of security. You had a boatload of police who were there in the stands. And it looks like the manager for Trabzonspor, in addition to our gentleman, goes up into the stands to confront the chairman of Alanyaspor.
Why did he go up there? Why didn't he confront his players or the other team's players? Why is he confronting the chairman from the other team?
That's got to be a deeper level conspiracy because the chairman doesn't have that much of a role in the actual what's going on the pitch. Like there's something we're not getting told here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to get to the bottom of that for the morning show tomorrow.
But he's a plonker.
No, definitely a plonker. All of them. A bunch of plonkers from Trabzonspor, sounds like. Jess, tell us how the Southeast All-American event went for you.
Oh, yes. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I expect them to do a good job. I was excited to see the players. I'd seen the highlight reel, but for these teams of young players to come together, have 2 practice sessions together, and gel on the pitch as well as they did, it was brilliant. The standard was great. Got to speak to a lot of college coaches. We've had a lot of offers coming in already. So it was a great platform for them to play, and they didn't disappoint. We had a couple of goalies have worldy performances, thankfully. Was very glad to see that. Was happy to see that. And, some really good players. A lot of class of 2020s that have now found schools to go to.
Awesome.
So we're planning to do a little follow-up story with some players, get in touch with them. So I'll definitely keep everyone posted on that. And next year, it looks like they're going to have a bunch of Europeans come over to play them. And that's something I'm looking forward to because as I was watching the game in my head, I was trying to compare it to the standard at that age in England because, we don't really have high school soccer, but we have academies that are connected to the pro clubs. And I was wondering, what level, how it competes. And, this will be a real opportunity to see that because they're going to bring a bunch of academy graduates, that kind of thing, over to play against the high school kids. So that'll be a fun way to see potentially which method is better because, there's a lot of talk here that high school doesn't mean anything anymore, that you have to play for your club, all of that. And, in England, you only play for club. So it'll be exciting to see which one actually works. And I think they both work. I think they're both great ways of development. And for me, I wish there wasn't such a competition between high school and club that there is sometimes, because if they could all work together, I think kids can develop, and particularly kids that I spoke to, see the benefits of both for their development, both personally and professionally. So really, really cool opportunity, and looking forward to following up with those kids and seeing where they're going.
I saw that make sure you're following SE All-American as well. There's a summer ID camp coming up in Peachtree City over at MOBA on August 8th. 30 girls,
right
30 boys. Yeah, right by you. So you're set. You can
hop
out and work with the keepers.
Yeah. I have to take my temperature first, though,
Yes.
We've got to stay safe, everybody.
Yeah. College coaches will be there. Players will be trained. It's an ID camp to get identified. So for some of those kids who have not found that college yet, this is a great opportunity. Follow SE All-American for all the latest, because it sounds like there's a whole bunch of things coming over the next year.
Absolutely. It's a great experience. And again, something that's very close to me, because college athletics, I still believe, is a fantastic way for you to go to the next level, particularly if potentially professional isn't for you and you want that degree.
I'm excited to see where it goes. There need to be more opportunities for kids and more opportunities to get noticed. So props to SE All-American. Props to you for doing 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
That had to be difficult.
I think that might have been part of the reason why I had to call out on Monday too. My voice is
not surprised.
There's only so much lemon and water you can drink when you've spoken that much.
This is true. And we're going to call it for tonight because I want to watch this game. It's 10 minutes in, and I want to see what happens here. This is the world feed, so I don't even know who's calling it for the world feed. It is not the Ian Dark feed with the classic
Go USA.
Go USA moment with Landon Donovan. So I want to see what happens. So we'll be back in the morning for the show. Jess will be back with us next Monday as well. And we're going to have an NWSL preview at some point this week. I'm glad we didn't get too deep into it, Jess, because we would have had to change everything.
We might have to wait a little bit because who knows what's going to happen now. We'll keep hoping and praying that things run smooth because
let's shoot for Thursday.
We need 18. Yes, let's go with Thursday, guys.
We'll shoot for that. So be on the lookout for it on a platform coming to you very soon. Thanks for hanging out with us. See y'all tomorrow. Mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho plata.
Mucho plata, y'all.